off and I went upstairs and got him out of bed, and I came downstairs and I've been up all night with the little baby, so I was like really tired, and I laid on the settee waiting for him to get dressed, and I was just about to get up to take him, and he was out the door like a shot, and I went out to the door and I couldn't see him anywhere. So
what had it been like in the house that morning? Because there's lots of reports, lots of speculations as to what mood he was in and whether he'd had any breakfast that day. What precisely do you recall all these years later of what happened inside the house with regards to his normal habits? Was he a normal sort of Monday morning?
Yes, it was an ordinary Monday morning, and yeah, he had his breakfast, and basically he was just as normal as he'll ever be.
Weetabix, was that, or did
yes,
he?
Yes, it was Weetabix, yeah.
He fed himself, he was self-sufficient in the sense of getting ready?
No, he'd got himself dressed, and I used to get the breakfast bowls out the night before, and everything was all prepared, so we had to sit at the table and eat his breakfast.
For more than 20 years, this estate has refused to give up its secret, the secret of who, on a November day, killed a 6-year-old boy, Rikki Neave. His mother, Ruth, stood trial for his murder and was acquitted. She was, however, jailed for child abuse. But behind that simple affirmation of what happened is a complex story of proven inconsistencies in witness statements, of half-truths and innuendos taken at face value and not properly tested, and of a police operation which to this day raises more questions than it answers. The killer of Rikki Neave remains at large, but maybe not for much longer. The Major Crimes Unit of Cambridgeshire, Hertfordshire and Bedfordshire Police is reviewing the investigation, and they have called in cold case specialists to assist. On Saturday, February the 14th, 2015, and on the day 20 years ago her son was laid to rest, Rikki's mother returned to the Welland estate to trace for the first time the route her son took to school on his last day, and to add another chapter in a long, tortuous fight to find the killer or killers of her son, the same killers who left his naked body sprawled in woodland.
Normally take him, yes, but that day, well, I will regret that for the rest of my life, so I've got to learn to live with that.
So he was out of the door. Did he shout to you as he left?
No, he never says goodbye or anything. He just went out the door, slammed the door, and that was it. Last time I see him.
We're standing at the very spot where he would have left. He left by the front door or the back door?
Front door.
So as he left the front door, he would have turned...
Well, he would have turned right, left.
Here's left. And a short walk to school?
Yeah, about 5, 6, 7 minutes. It was just along the pathway, Red Mile Walk.
Did you have any concern? I mean, a lot of people have questioned this, you know, about a young lad heading out of the house to school at his age, but had he done it before, or would he normally just meet up with friends as he went to school, or would you normally have taken him?
I would normally take him, because the next door neighbour used to take him in the morning and I'd pick him up in the afternoon, or vice versa. It was just that morning I was so dog tired and I didn't move as quick as I should because he was at that door like a shot.
So Rikki's gone, you've gone back into the house to deal with your other children.
Yes, I have.
And what you thought was to be a normal day turned out to be anything but.
Okay, we're at the very spot now where at 1:30 on that Monday, Rikki was again seen by a reliable witness who distinctly remembers the very brief conversation at this very spot that she had with Rikki, and she remembers it because it was a monosyllabic type of conversation as far as Rikki was concerned, and the statement that we've read says simply that he told her to, and you can guess the rest, move away, and she remembered it because of that conversation. So that's another sighting of Rikki, 1:30.
I came here to put in place, if Rikki had turned around and run out of school or never turned up at school, to ring me to let me know, and that never happened.
Had it not happened before, or just hadn't happened on that day?
Hadn't happened at all.
There was some doubt raised by various people in the statements that I've read as to whether you had put that in practice, but looking at some of the latest statements, categorically that was the position with the school,
yes,
that they should have rung you. So on that last day when he arrived there on his own, we understand then when he didn't appear at the school for the morning register, you weren't contacted.
No, I wasn't contacted at all. If I had been contacted, I'd have looked for him.
So, Gary, you've gone through all of the statements and had a look at what did happen later that day. This was one of the earlier sightings of Rikki when he got to the school gates. He'd walked here with his friend.
Yes.
The friend's mother was with them. Tell us what happened then.
The mother says when they get to this point, her son then goes into school, and she watches Rikki, who then goes across to the shops from this point.
So Rikki did not go into school.
No,
that
he did
day?
definitely not go into school.
Okay. She didn't think anything of that, presumably sufficiently to raise it. Did they know Rikki, or was it just?
It was one of Rikki's friends.
Yeah, but she just assumed that Rikki, being Rikki, would go to school when he got ever he wanted from the shop.
Yes.
So he did not walk to school that morning then on his own.
Definitely not. No.
We're now at the shopping centre, or a small group of shops on Sculford Drive, and the shops seem to play quite a detail in what happened that day and the various sightings of Rikki. We've got one sighting of Rikki near the school, which is very close to the shops, at 11 o'clock that day. Another sighting at 1:30 near the shops. At 2:30, another adult witness sees Rikki with a male outside these shops, and then we go to 3:30. He's seen at the shops. 3:30, he's seen walking along Belvoir Way towards the Eye Road. But then again, 5:15 to 5:20, another lady has put a statement to say that she saw him at the shops. 5:40, we get another sighting at the shops. Another sighting, 5:40, he was inside the shops and with another child who again is on the statements. Let's go back to you then, Gary. Where do you think Rikki had been that day? Because if he was nipping in and out of the shops, he had to have been he had to have been going back somewhere, presumably to be using as a base. What's your theory on that one?
My theory on that one is just behind us is Tilton Close. In Tilton Close there was at least one ground floor flat that had been abandoned or was empty, and the police knew that children went in that house. There's evidence from the police of that. Also there was a row of disused empty garages, which again the police knew that children went into. They've put that in their statements. So it's quite possible, it's only a matter of 100 yards where he could have actually walked and stayed there.
Did Rikki have a habit of playing with older boys? Because to have gone into an empty house, it strikes me that possibly he would have been encouraged or coerced to have gone into an empty house if he was using it as some sort of base. And you said yourself, you discovered afterwards that he had been part of a gang of people. It was almost a tradition on that estate that people nicked from the shop.
Well, yeah, but the thing was, the reason why Rikki was hanging about with older lads was the fact is they used him to go through little windows, open the door and burgle people's places. And I kept on and on about it, and I tried to stop him, and I've told people to keep away from my son and everything, and it just didn't seem to work. It's just like me and the whole estate on my own, and basically I was just grounded, so I couldn't help at all.
That day he was seen from the statements that we've looked at right through till early evening, 6:30 at night. Now he'd left your house in the morning and not been back.
No, that's right.
So being a little boy of 6, like lots of little boys of 6 and adults a lot older than that, he would have needed to have been fed and watered somewhere that day.
Yes, he would have done. Yes, I quite agree, and that's what worried me. I'm thinking, well, has he eaten or anything like that? And that's the reason why I called the police, because I thought if he's like nobody's seen him anywhere, where was he and who was feeding him or anything like that? Where was he going to the toilet? Where he was drinking? I don't know. Looking back, it was a worry.
It does seem, though, that looking at all of the statements, that the common denominator that we seem to have stumbled upon is these shops.
Yeah.
And so whatever happened that day probably happened, would you agree, somewhere in and around the shops rather than in and around your home or your part of the estate, that whatever was happening, because he would have been seen, there would have been more statements of people seeing him in and around your house if he'd have been there. But in fact, all of the statements and all of the witnesses came forward, most of them talked about these shops.
Yeah, and it's very worrying. I sort of look back and I think something must have happened because, well, like I said, he never came back, and with everything going on at the shops, something seriously must have happened. And I'd like to know if he stayed anywhere overnight, if he was alive overnight, because none of us know when he died, no time of death or anything, so that's what we're trying to look for.
We're back on the estate which you've been back to, I understand, just the once since you left here 20 odd years ago. What's it been like for you this morning, just walking that school route?
Very difficult and very upsetting. It seems like I'm walking his last walks, and it's very upsetting. I mean, his last movements.
It's and you've still got lots of unanswered questions of that day.
Yes, a lot of unanswered questions. The main one is, where was he overnight? Where was he during the night or overnight? Who had him? Who had him overnight? None of us know.
So Gary, one of the key bits of evidence that you feel, and perhaps others may now feel, has not been properly explored is the evidence of a paperboy on the morning after Rikki was reported missing and on the day that his body was found. We're somewhere near where the paperboy said he saw something.
Yes, what he's saying is he was out doing his paper out at about 7:15 on a Tuesday morning, and he see a lad come out from the wooded area just across the road. The lad then jumps over a little wooden fence on the slip road off the parkway, jumps over the other fence to the other side. As he jumps over that, he noticed the second lad stumble out of the wooded area. He fell over. He shouted something to the first lad. The first lad then turned round and ran at quite a fast speed, jumped back over the two fences. They met up in this area and then ran back down Belvoir Way.
Right. So the paperboy came forward after the public appeal.
Yes, he did.
He made a statement to the police. I think he made 2 statements, didn't he, to the police?
In total, he's made 4.
4 statements to the police. He also produced some sketches of of the description of the 2 boys that he saw. What did the police say when they analysed his statement as to what was possibly going on that morning then with these 2 boys?
I don't think they gave it any credence at all.
Why do you say that?
They never done any appeal at all for anybody else that might have seen these 2 lads coming out of the woods.
At the time, though, you said that they did 4 interviews with this boy, they must have begun to believe that he had something to tell them.
I think they did. The paperboy actually names the 2 people, and we've now got the drawings that the police artist made of these 2 lads, and they are very good drawings.
Well, you've obtained copies of those drawings. Were they ever used in the case either against Ruth or in any other case subsequent to that?
No. The envelope that these drawings were in was addressed to Ruth's legal team at Northampton Crown Court, which means I believe that Ruth's defence team didn't even have these photographs until it was in court.
And didn't use them, because there was nothing by that stage that they could have associated with those drawings. They had statements from a paperboy, no appeal for witnesses that would have verified that paperboy's evidence. I've read those statements, or I've read parts of the statements, and he seemed quite categoric as to what he'd seen and the time that he saw it.
Yes, in his first statement he describes these 2 lads, and he stays with that. He describes their clothing as well. In a second statement, which I believe was made 2 days later to the police, he goes in and he actually names these 2 people.
I know that you and Ruth believe that those statements and that testimony may not have been, as you say, given the credence that you ought to perhaps have been given to at the time. What would you say if people remembered that morning? I mean, because there was no public appeal, this is effectively almost a public appeal 20 odd years later for anybody who might also be able to come forward and verify what that paper boy said he saw.
Yes. I think if anybody see anything that Tuesday morning in this area, they need to come forward and tell us. I think there was a third person involved, and the reason I think that is because these two lads suddenly changed direction and ran a different direction to which they came out of the woods. And also Ricky's clothes were found very close to here, and there is a cut through off of Willoughby Court onto the Eye Road and onto Belvoir Way where these two lads were running to.
So the area where the paperboy says that he saw these boys running from, we now know to have been fairly near to actually where Ricky's body was found later that same day.
They were seen just over 5 hours before Ricky's body was found, roughly 100 yards from where we are now.
So Gary, you've been, I would say, the key element in this latest campaign to get the case properly re-investigated, but you haven't been at it a matter of days or weeks, you've been at it a matter of what? I think some years.
Lots of years. When me and Ruth first met, nearly 7 years ago now, Ruth told me straight away about Ricky, and I believed her straight away. And I told her then, I said, whenever she's ready to start investigating and digging, I would be by her side all the way through it. The big turning point was when we managed to get hold of the files, which was March last year. I didn't dream by looking at the statements and evidence that I'd be able to find out things so easily. I thought it'd be hard to find. But when you come across two statements by one person made 24 hours apart that are completely different, and the police never questioned it, they never checked out, never cross-referenced any statements or anything, it's been fairly easy going through them files to find all these problems. You've been through several files by the looks of the copies that you've sent me. Yes. Any idea how many you've actually examined over the last year? Rue's got 1,400 pages of statements. I've been through all of them. I've been through a fair amount of unused police statements, and I'm not sure why they're in a box marked unused. And all the witness statements, the majority of them have all been unused. I should think I've probably got close on 100 different people whose statements I've read. It's not to flatter you at all, but I do know that the police have taken your initial inquiries and inquiries right up until the end of last year. They've taken them quite seriously, haven't you, what you've been able to point out to them, because this came, this latest re-examination that's now going on only came after the year before, when the police had come to you and said, we've had a fresh look at it, nothing new, let's move on. Yeah, the interesting one about that was we asked them beforehand to look at a certain person's statement. They said they couldn't find it originally. They then found it, and they said the reason that this statement was discounted at the sighting of Ricky was because he couldn't actually agree or describe what Ricky was wearing. I've been through 76 pages of that statement, and in that statement not once is this person, this witness, asked what Ricky was wearing that night. But the police 19, 20 years later can turn around and say that's a ghost sighting because he couldn't describe what Ricky was wearing. Well, he was never asked at the time what Ricky was wearing. What are you hopeful for now? I'm hoping the police reopen the investigation fully and go and arrest the people who I have named to the police as murdering Ricky.
One troubling aspect of Ricky's murder remains whether police properly investigated the possibility of it being a Bulger-style killing. Certainly, as the Peterborough Telegraph reported, the man heading the investigation, Detective Superintendent Keith Chamberlain, did not rule out the possibility that Ricky had been the victim of a Jamie Bulger-style abduction and murder, which had happened only 20 months earlier. Our investigation has found a troubling number of sexual assaults on young boys on the Welland estate in the period before Ricky's murder. In June 1992, for instance, a boy the same age as Ricky was found naked by a woman in the dyke in Eye Road, not far from where Ricky's own body was to be later found. The boy had been tied up and assaulted. And then there was another young boy in June of 1994, attacked, stripped and tied to a tree on the Welland estate, in fact, round the corner from the Neave home. The boy was told he would be strangled if he moved. And then a third case, this time of an 11-year-old, tied up and stripped by a gang of 5 boys in the late summer of 1994. And then we have a statement from a deputy headmaster who told police at the time he had seen a gang of boys with corrupt wire hanging around his school. He was worried.